Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Studio 118. We're here at Calvary South Austin. Studio 118 is brought to you by Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18. Come, let us reason, says the Lord. Or if you're King James, saith the Lord. We're glad you're tuning in, and we have a little studio audience with us. We got a fun and exciting topic to talk about today, aliens. Which aliens we'll be talking about, we'll figure that out in a little bit. I know that's the current buzz. Anyways, I'm Reuben. This is Bunjee.
Hello.
We're glad you're tuning in, and we're broadcasting on Facebook and also Austin Cable Access Channel 11. Thank you, one viewer. I hope you can call in. On Facebook, we have a live chat going. Of course, as we always do with each episode, we have a Q&A time after our discussion. If you have questions throughout, feel free to drop a line there in Facebook live chat, and we will queue up your question. We already got some queued up. It's going to be a good show. If you want to call in your question, feel free to do so. That number is 512-576-5433. Also, we're here live at Calvary South Austin in Austin, Texas. Just to let you know, we're a church here. And we have, of course, opened our doors quite a while now. We have services where we go line by line, verse by verse through the Bible. And, of course, we have praise and worship, children's ministry, youth ministry, what have you. But we invite you to join us on Wednesdays and Sundays. Sunday mornings, we have services at 9:15 and 11:15 a.m. And on Wednesday evenings, we gather at 7 p.m. So we invite you to come on down and hear Pastor Bunjee do it all these days.
We've actually been open for a year. I just
Has it been a year?
That just hit me. Yeah, Mother's Day was a year.
Wow.
We reopened Mother's Day last year. So.
What is time anymore? I don't know. We'll talk about
space.
That. Yes, it is. Everything is not what it seems. Does that make sense? I don't know. Anyways, yeah, we're glad you're here.
I didn't understand that at all.
Yeah, I don't know. Nothing makes sense anymore, guys. Anyways, we have a good topic. As I mentioned, we're talking about aliens. Some of the areas we'll broach is Nick Cage an alien?
So, well, you just you moved here from El Paso, so you know a lot about.
Yes, I know
aliens.
a lot about transportation of aliens, all their methods, and I personally know an alien. So we're going to bring it up. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So,
Which aliens are we talking about?
Yeah,
then?
we're talking about the extraterrestrial.
Oh, so.
Yeah, not the next door neighbor
All right.
terrestrial.
Not the Canadians.
Yeah, not the Canadians. Yes, not the ones clamoring to get into this disgusting nation. But anyways, that's another topic. Well, yeah, some of the questions we'll answer. We'll talk about Nick Cage. Is he an alien? Mark Zuckerberg, is he a lizard person? The audience wants to know. So let's jump right into it, guys. Aliens. So this has been a subject that has been in the news, actually, as of late. We're going to show some videos in a little bit, but I want to first just kind of cover the ground, give a little background in terms of, when it comes to aliens and outer space visitors and, of course, UFOs, unidentified flying objects. They have a different name now. But, these have been going on for decades, perhaps even centuries. And there's reports, and, of course, we have surveys and polls of, what exactly do people believe about, possible otherworld visitors and the existence of such beings, right?
Right.
So talking about that report, some of these videos that have been surfacing recently, the Office of Naval Intelligence is actually due to release a report early next month detailing, apparently, what is with some of these unidentified flying objects that have been recorded even on video, as we'll see in a little bit.
But do it more like a Seinfeld a bit here,
What's the deal with these UFOs?
Good. Nicely done.
Aliens. All right. So they got a report coming out. It's supposed to give a detailed analysis of unidentified aerial phenomena, is what they're called now, and give some sort of intelligence briefing on this and the relevance of that. Also, as recent as 2019, you guys might remember Storm Area 51 event. where
That's where I got arrested.
yes, a Facebook page was set up, essentially just calling out all Earthlings to storm Area 51, and it was expected that around 2 million folks were going to storm the base and find out what really is going on.
What is going on?
All I know from Area 51 is the video game that I played. So
I
never conquered it.
No, who did?
Yeah, who did? You need at least 4 players to do that.
Yeah.
But sadly, not the 2 million showed up. They RSVP'd though, but only about 6,000 people made it, and they sold trinkets, ate some good food, and probably had a concert or two.
So it's kind of like a alien Coachella
yes.
kind of event.
Yes, the way
but no Cella.
No Cella. I love it. We're familiar with a lot of popular alien movies, right? We got you got your Alien trilogy with Sigourney Weaver. Mm-hmm. You got Independence Day, the Will Smith one, and the recent what's the Hemsworth guy? There's Signs, one of my personal favorites.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And we have Contact from a book by Carl Sagan. Even there you go, tinfoil hat or the foil hats. Star Trek, of course, the series and the movies have just kind of made it commonplace to think about. Oh, what would it be like to travel the galaxy and the universe and visit other alien planets and stuff? Another one of my personal favorites, the movie District 9.
Oh yeah, that's a gem right there.
I know that's Larry's favorite. There it is. He's giving us the no, doesn't like it. And the 80s movie E.T.
And what does that stand for?
I don't know, but he phones home.
Yeah, he does phone home.
And his finger lights up.
But E.T. being taken from, extra.
He's extra.
Extraterrestrial.
That's not the millennial catchphrase. It is 80s catchphrase, so it means something else. And then, of course, this is one I haven't seen, but I know it's very popular with the much older folk like you, Bunjee, Close Encounters of a Third Kind.
It's all about the mashed potatoes.
Got nothing on that one. I love me some mashed taters.
Yes.
Also, a recent survey in 2020, an Ipsos survey, detailed that around 57% of people believe that intelligent life exists on other planets. So that's more than half of people surveyed believe that intelligent life, not just basic biological life, but intelligent life exists on other planets.
Right.
And also 45% believe that UFOs exist and have visited Earth, right? So that's a good chunk of people there. So people's minds are open to the idea of other life forms, sentient life, intelligent life being out there other than humans that exist on this earth, And I think definitely, like we talk about a lot, how culture affects some people's worldview and theology. So, the culture is out there. Of course, we have movies and books and conferences and all this kind of stuff. So that definitely lends a hand.
And I was really big into this stuff before I came to Christ back in the mid-'90s.
I have a feeling you're really big into everything.
Oh, I was really big into everything I was into.
Yeah.
So, but I, even as an artist, one of the things that I made money on was doing these Big Daddy Roth style designs, but with aliens. So Big Daddy Roth back in the 60s would design these hot rod cars with these monsters, just busting out of the car, and big gear shifts, and monster claws, and and I was a huge fan of Big Daddy Roth when I was a kid. Had the whole stack of trading cards of these hot rod cars with being driven by monsters and whatnot, And so later on, when I became a professional artist, one of the things that I started drawing were alien spaceships with Big Daddy Roth style aliens busting out of the tops, and flying these crafts around. And there's paintings that I've done. There's illustrations that I created along this line. And I was really big into just studying about aliens and the possibility of visitations, and the crowd that I hung out with, it was offensive to suggest that a universe as large as the one we exist in, that there wouldn't be life elsewhere, and there would be questions thrown around like, are you so arrogant to think that this is the only planet that could have life on it, So there's people who are even offended by the idea that you might say that there's not alien life out there.
There has to be. They want it to be so.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm guessing you watched the entire series of ALF.
Oh yeah, I grew up on ALF, and an alien who wants to eat cats. I'm on board.
Love it.
Still one of my favorite shows.
Yes, great.
Willie.
That's pretty good. That's really good. All right, let's see. So when we talk about not just possibility of alien life forms, but it really does center around, like we talked about this report coming out in June. A lot of it does seem to center around and closely linked to UFO sightings, right? My understanding, as looking through kind of a little bit of the history of these two subjects. So there's UFOs, and then you have, do aliens exist? I think what came first really were the kind of spotting, the sightings of UFOs. And these have, from my understanding, have been around for centuries. There have been writings and reports of just casual observations of funny lights in the sky, or saucer-shaped things that were flying through the sky at weird kind of angles and whatnot.
And then even petroglyphs.
Yeah.
Of drawings that could be an alien, or stone reliefs, from ancient cultures that kind of looks like a person with a space helmet on, and these sorts of things, right? So
that's good. That looks like my son that I'm holding.
Yes,
there he is.
And
I think that's just a newborn babe who hasn't opened his eyes yet. He has swollen eyes. It happens.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's an alien, but it's an alien.
It's an alien. Yes. We need some hair on you, man. There you go. So,
yeah.
This was interesting that there supposedly is the beginning of the age of the flying saucer. So where the amount of reports of seeing UFOs in the sky just started increasingly dramatically, right? And apparently,
so prior to Prometheus.
Yes.
Okay.
Prior to that, yes.
Yes.
So after. This is the prequel. Yes, okay. You're right.
The prequel.
Yeah. So apparently the beginning of the age of the flying saucer was around June 24th, 1947, when Kenneth Arnold, the pilot, witnessed 9 bright objects while flying near Mount Rainier in Washington. And apparently, detailing that these disc-shaped objects were flying through the sky in excess of 1,600 miles per hour. So
right.
Much faster than anything we know of, even especially for that time. And then not only that, this wasn't an isolated incident,
right.
but it was corroborated by multiple witnesses. At least 20 other reports of similar sightings corroborated Kenneth Arnold's observation. And this kind of just kicked off we're seeing things in the sky. Let's start reporting them. Let's start contacting people and getting these things jotted down. So from the 40s through the 60s, it caught at least the military's attention enough so that the U.S. Air Force, they were investigating these observations and all these witnesses, and they released several reports in that 20-year span. And a lot of their conclusions were just kind of like vague or inconclusive.
Right.
And they were really just trying to find out, is this a threat? Do we have other countries trying to gun us down or trying to do some recon before they really let us have it? So that was their main intention, but essentially they were like, well, we really can't go one way or the other. It's inconclusive, right? Mm-hmm. At least it's not a threat. Now, from the 60s and on, this is where now you start having the close link between the UFOs and aliens. So sightings of not just the disc-shaped objects or whatever kind of shape object you have in the sky, UFO, but now you have witnesses detailing, no, we saw little green men, for instance, or the grayish type figures that walk around in cornfields and stuff like that. Or even more, these closer encounters, right? The close encounters of a third kind where you have people being abducted even. So from the 60s and on, those types of reports started getting more numerous. And and that even leads up to today. One estimate that I saw was from some guy who researches a bunch of these reports. It was that at least the ones that are reported were about 1 million per year are reported. But he says that's probably like 1/10 of what's actually witnessed, because not everybody's going to go and put their their witness, their observations on paper or call somebody about it because, for whatever reason. So, but at least 1 million per year are reported. Now, the question still is valid of how many of these are truthful, how many of these are valid, and that's what we're going to get into.
How many of them really just saw, the Mothman? I don't know.
The Mothman.
Who can say?
I just know a reference to it. I'm not familiar with that. I am too young. Sorry.
You keep telling yourself
Showing
that.
showing your age. Yes. All right. We love these UFO sightings. I'm sure a lot of you guys out in the audience have definitely been keeping track of people doing interviews and releasing reports and leaking videos and whatnot. And maybe this is a good time to watch a few of those videos just to gain a sense of, what exactly, maybe you're not familiar. Maybe the only thing you've really heard is some mention of Roswell, some alien spacecraft possibly taken by Area 51 or something like that. Or so let's look at a couple of these videos just to gather a sense of what we're talking about.
Is this the alien autopsy video?
Yeah.
Watch here?
Yeah, the one that was just released. I leaked it. So this first one is actually by the Guardian YouTube channel.
Look on the ASA. My gosh. We're going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not how that's slow, is it? It's not. Dude, on Earth, dude. Well, the first look at that thing. It's rotating.
And this next one is on a clip from the Today Show detailing a few more.
In night vision video from a Navy destroyer, a mysterious flying triangle above the deck of the ship. The Pentagon confirming the images obtained by documentary filmmaker Jeremy Corbell were taken by Navy personnel, expected to be a part of a report on unidentified aerial phenomenon to be presented to Congress this summer. Already online, some skeptics say the images are caused by cameras trying to focus, but some of the objects go beyond just flying in the sky. One shows a spherical object dipping into the ocean, similar to an incident in Puerto Rico where an object was tracked buzzing an airport, then flying into the water, popping back out before appearing to split into two and disappearing. Over the last several weeks, some of the nation's top former intelligence officials have been raising eyebrows.
Look at that thing. It's rotating.
And I believe there's one more from known as the Phoenix
Something
Flaps.
strange happened in the skies over Arizona that still hasn't been fully explained. An event now known as the Phoenix Lights.
It was extraordinary.
No one knows for sure what happened that night in the skies over Arizona in March, but thousands of people saw something.
That video is clearly put together by kids that went to the University of Phoenix.
Yes, they didn't finish either. You know what, one thing, watching that, I find it highly arrogant of the Pentagon to go and try to research flying triangles. Doesn't make sense. It just seems like they're trying to bully them.
We know that's how the Predator traps the aliens, right?
Nice. What are the Superman villains, the guys that get caught in the, is it a triangle?
No, that's it's a glass, like it's a.
Well, isn't it a shape or something?
Yeah, it's just a rectangle, something like that.
Anyways,
I forget.
I don't know my shapes.
I know
guys.
I'm old, but
it's a rhombus. Anyway, so yeah, those videos, and we see several others that are occasionally being leaked out to the general public, and it just piques interest. And sure enough, again, as I mentioned, there's a report coming out in next month, apparently. We'll see if it gets delayed, the government. But, it'll be interesting to see what the conclusions are. And, of course, people are just eager to already jumping to conclusions and making their own theories. And
if I can suggest to the government
sure.
that, maybe get some gas at the gas station before you finish up this UFO report.
Can we pause the report, please?
We can wait.
Yes.
We can wait for that.
I've already used up all my plastic bags. I have nothing else to transport gas in. Oh. Please help me. All right. So,
this world is weird, man. What is going on?
And we really want aliens to visit us. I don't know.
It's obvious to me why they're kind of standoffish.
Yeah. Maybe they're looking for gas. Maybe maybe they're looking for more energy to go onto another planet. They have no
I'm pretty
concern
sure
for
all
us.
the aliens have gas.
Yes, all that alien cuisine. Oh, it's got to be weird. All right, so now we get to our interesting questions about life. Is there life on other planets? This is a question that I'm sure all of us have asked at one point in time, especially even Christians, right? You ask the question, you hear, like Bunjee was saying, you have friends growing up that would even just balk at the idea of, what do you mean? Of course there's life
How
elsewhere.
could you even question it?
Yeah, how could you even question it, right? And so even as a Christian, this question might come up and possibly shake your foundations a little bit. What would it mean if the scientists or whatever, found life, sentient, intelligent life on somewhere else in the universe? How would that impact the Christian worldview, the Christian message, the gospel? Salvation come to human beings. Would that be impacted at all? But the first question we have to ask, well, is there life on other planets, right?
I think that's narrowing the question down to what an actual scientist should be considering. But that does show you the question itself is based in the anthropic theological argument or the fine-tuning argument, right? To assume that if there is life beyond this planet, it must be on another planet. Well, why would we assume that?
As opposed to
immaterial life, life that exists as stardust floating around, or why is it that we automatically assume that if we're going to find life, it's going to be on another planet? That's an assumption that's just based on our own experience and the fine-tuning argument that, because this is the way we experience life, then this is the sort of life that we should expect to find elsewhere.
Yeah.
Which is why when you see the Hollywood creations of aliens, they're typically, very much, humanoidish, with, variations.
They're all standing up.
But yeah,
they all got two arms, or not all of them, but
right.
They got arms and legs, and they look almost like humans.
Right.
Yeah. That's the imagination that the the creators of those stories have.
Sure.
I get it. Yeah, I know. I get what you're talking about. So yeah, there are assumptions baked into those kinds of, when you're a scientist and you're set out to do research, there are assumptions, and we talked about this, right? About the use and abuse of science episode that we did. Check out our YouTube channel for that. Where with any sort of hypothesis that you put forth and any sort of research that you're going to do, there's going to be assumptions that you just have to bake in. And you're free to question those assumptions. And I think that's what we're doing a good job of, questioning the assumptions that go into that. Hey, well, you're looking for life, but what makes you think that you're going to find life on other planets? Why not immaterial life? Why not immaterial intelligence?
Interdimensional beings.
Yeah.
Like if we are experiencing some sort of life form that appears within, our system here, within our solar system, then should we assume that they've come from far, far away, or that they have basically appeared because they're existing within dimensions that we don't really have access to right now? So when you see like the video of that craft going into the water and there's no splash, and then coming right back out and there's two, okay, so that could be the work of George Lucas, or that could be an interdimensional being that we're watching enter into our realities. So we exist in these four dimensions, but how many dimensions are there beyond what we have access to?
Yeah.
So just questions that I wonder, like, I have a hard time believing that aliens are getting in their spacecraft and flying all the way here from wherever, or is it wormholes, or there's so many questions to ask, but the concept that, well, if we're going to find life, we're going to find it on another planet, is just, that is based on this fine-tuning argument that, well, because we experience life the way we experience it here on this planet, then it must be that if there's going to be life out there, it's going to have formed in the same way it formed here. But then that gets into a bit of panspermia as well.
Yeah, so for our audience, maybe you can give a little quick rundown of perhaps the fine-tuning and also the panspermia idea that you just mentioned.
It was so sure. Fine tuning is just to provide a summary of it. It's the idea that there is a design to this earth that God has dialed into the creation, which is specific to the sort of life that He put here. All forms of life, but most specifically human life. Mm-hmm. So the concept of the anthropic principle, or the teleological argument is kind of centers around the idea that if these factors weren't true of this planet, then you couldn't have life here.
Yeah,
you couldn't have the life that we have on this planet. So I think does that sum it up? As simply as possible.
Yeah. Fine tuning. What are the possible explanations that would best explain the emergence of our type of life? Right. Not just for instance, you have scientists that like we'll probably talk about this in a little bit, but SETI doing their research and looking for life. Well, you ask, what do they define as life? And they're looking for intelligent life. So they're always looking for patterns, because they know that intelligent life and minds are able to produce that kind of information. So they look for that specific kind of information. So there are constants and quantities baked into not just the planet that we reside in, but the entire universe as a whole. What governs the function of the universe, and not only that, but the creation of stars and galaxies and everything in it. There are constants, well over 100, that are fine-tuned to a very small degree, such that if you it's like a dial, right, that has like these minute little spaces, such that you even move that thing over just a tad, you have no universe.
Right.
You have no life.
And then part of the problem with evolution is that there are so many constants that have a variation in it. Let me explain it like this. Take the moon. And the moon is escaping the orbit of the Earth ever so slightly, and it's measurable. But if you take that and run it backwards, and you bring the moon a little bit closer to the Earth every year for 1 billion years, well, you've got the moon rolling around the face of the Earth. Mm-hmm. So that you can't go back in time 1 billion years to the Big Bang and find a moon that's not rolling around the surface of the Earth, because we see the measurable amount, the constant degradation of the orbit of the moon around the Earth, distance, right? Yeah. So now you don't have 1 billion years for evolution to happen. And so then how did we get here if there's not enough time for some single cell, goop getting struck by lightning and evolving slowly but surely into who we are, right?
Right.
So there's that, you have this constant, rate of decay of the orbit of the moon around the Earth. Also, life as we are could not exist on Mars or Jupiter or, the planet that we're on is specifically dialed in and fine-tuned for us. Now, the evolutionists might say that, well, we evolved because of those fine-tuning things, right? The way the Earth is why we are the way we are. And it's like, well, that's convenient, to go in that direction. And yet, they'll be the same ones to say that, well, the Earth was very different at the time when, non-life became life, or biogenesis happened.
Sure.
And they'll talk about, the primordial ooze that was here. And so wait a minute, how did the entire ecosystem of the planet evolve along with us as we evolved as well, so that it just so happened that the planet that we're on is perfectly fine-tuned for what evolved from goo to you by way of the zoo, right? So the fine-tuning argument is very interesting, especially when you dial in like the reverse of the moon and the orbit, and how long we actually have before the moon is destroying the Earth rather than being a good satellite that captures or blocks meteorites from hitting the planet, right?
Yeah.
So how long do we have then before we have to say, okay, you can't go much further back than this And so that's not enough time for evolution to happen. That's not enough time to give, non-life becoming life and evolving into us. And so how did we get here? And that's where the panspermia concept comes in, and people will come along and say, well, the aliens came and they monkeyed around with the monkeys and they created, or they seeded the planet, or there's different versions of it, but the idea is that, aliens.
Aliens.
We are the way we are, because...
So another intelligent life form. Seeded the planet, yes.
Seeded the planet.
Yeah.
And whether they came along and monkeyed with the monkeys, or whether, they started, life from a petri dish, or, I guess if you get into, some theories about, some evil black scientists creating the white race and all this kinds of things, there's a bunch of different, there's a bunch of different weird ideas out there about
Thank you, Internet.
How we came about being. But all of this is kind of centered around this idea that there is this other life out there that came, and now they're just running this big experiment, to see what we're going to do. And
there's no shortage of theories, that's for sure.
And then on top of that, it comes along the theories of, and they also gave us religion.
Yes.
To control us.
Of course.
So, religion's the opiate of the masses, invented by the aliens so that, they can trick us into worshiping, them.
Those aliens thought of everything.
It's just...
It's like, are we in the program The Sims? Is that what it is?
Or is this a Sim City?
The alien edition?
So there's a ufologist named Dr. Barry Downing. He's a PhD, or what I like to call a FUD. And and he's also a Presbyterian minister, right? And he's one among many people who, and I'm quoting this, he believes aliens have come to Earth and influenced our history and religions for millennia. But unlike most of us, Dr. Downing wrote the book, The Bible and Flying Saucers, in 1968, arguing that Christ was indeed not of this world. Okay. So far, well,
I had the bracelet, yeah.
He said, Jesus was an extraterrestrial sent to Earth to rid the world of sins and wickedness. To support this contention, Dr. Browning cited Bible lines saying Jesus was from another world. He uses John chapter 8. And this particular passage reads from the New American Standard Bible, and he was saying to them, you are from below, I am from above. Yes. You are of this world, I am not of this world. So Dr. Downing believes that Jesus, has left his world, to come to our world and interact, with us.
Yes.
And then he's returned to his alien world. And so Jesus must be an alien.
Good old Presbyterian hermeneutics.
Wow. So that's definitely one take on it.
That's one take, I'll say.
So he believes that the angels in the Bible are aliens.
Yes.
That they're aliens that live on another planet somewhere else.
On the dark side of the moon.
On the dark side of the moon.
Yeah. Yeah, we know this.
Where all things happen.
But the Jesus one, that really...
that's odd.
I'll follow you all the way to the angels, but don't touch Jesus.
I've even seen reports, offered by some that the aliens faked the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ to deceive us, so that they can, basically control us.
Yeah. Are they that smart though? Can you get a group of aliens that will not rat out on each other?
I mean, you saw the Phoenix Lights, right?
Yes. People will believe a lot of stuff. That's right.
So seems plausible.
There's also the Marfa lights. I wonder if they're connected.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Marfa lights?
I have. Yeah.
I have not. Even though I grew up kind of close, but did not see them.
Yeah, we take an annual trip out to Big Bend.
You and your alien buddy?
And, no, my wife.
My bad.
But yeah, so we've been out to Marfa several times, and we've gone up to check out use the telescopes up. What's the name of the mountain up there? But
something dark probably.
Yeah, something. Very interesting stuff, and then with my own background being, my father worked for McDonnell Douglas, was part of the space race. And so I grew up in a house that was all about, moon exploration and
got to beat Sputnik.
My dad worked on the Apollo technology as well as on Skylab and actually helped design the first toilets that went up into space.
Are we cleared for this information?
Which basically explains a lot of my humor.
Yeah. Yes.
And when I play poker, I always get a royal flush. So.
Is that coming through on the mic just loud enough? Oy vey. All right. Well, yeah, so, we're still talking about, does life exist on other planets, right? And so that's good that you brought up fine-tuning of not only the planet, but of life and of the universe. And I think that's something, I want to kind of camp there a little bit, because I think that's something that a lot of people don't appreciate all that much, is exactly how fine-tuned. And maybe that's something we want to kind of dig in a little bit more. We brought up not only, issues about having a moon a certain distance away from the Earth, right? That is actually one of the requirements for having a planet that will sustain the type of life that we have here on Earth. Another issue that you want to raise would be the kind of star that this planet would be orbiting, and also the distance that planet would be from the sun, so as not to get baked in radiation, but also to have an orbit so regular that the times that you are facing or far away from the sun, you're not essentially just freezing to death, right? So that you can support life. There's also such things that it has to be a certain kind of galaxy that we have to exist in, and also a certain place inside of the galaxy. So many of you know, of course, that we reside inside of the Milky Way galaxy. And a Milky Way galaxy is a spiral galaxy. It's also more flat-ish than other types of galaxies.
There's also kind of like a creamy nougat right in the middle.
Yeah, that's the best part. That's the one I think where life would exist. It's all attracted to the creamy nougat center. Love it. So we are a spiral galaxy. We reside in between.
And the dark chocolate Milky Way galaxy is the best.
No, I pass on dark chocolate. Milk chocolate all the way. Team milk chocolate here. Hashtag Team milk chocolate. I don't know what that means. Yes.
All right.
We reside also in one of the outer arms of this spiral galaxy. So we're not too close to the center, where there's going to be a lot of action, a lot of play with, of course, just stars crashing into each other. Just a lot of dangerous activity there towards the center of the galaxy. So we're more towards the outer limits of the galaxy. Talking about the constants of the universe. Of course, you got the speed of light. There's also the four forces, fundamental forces that govern the universe, and those have to be fine-tuned to a very minute degree. And some of that fine-tuning has been discovered even all the way to, let's say 6 decimal places. So we're talking about if you have a dial that is dialed so precise that it can cover 6 decimal places, right? So you're moving something that is very, very fine-tuned. And if you just move it within those 6 decimal places, a little bit above or a little bit below, guess what? You have no creation of planets. You have no creation of stars. You don't have the creation of life, of course. Ultimately, I believe ever since the 1950s, some of these constants started being discovered. And as it stands right now, I believe there's over 140 parameters that govern essentially what it takes to have sentient life. Not the kind of biological life that you would find like in a petri dish, like, okay, is it replicating? Is it just reacting to its environment? That kind of stuff. No, intelligent life as we see here before us. So the 140 parameters, all right? Not only that, but a lot of these parameters are codependent on one another, such that if you touch one, it's going to affect the other. And so there's this codependency play in action. So I hope you appreciate that life, the support of life, not just in our galaxy, not just on our Earth, but for the entire universe. It is so fine-tuned that makes it the odds extraordinarily low that life would exist elsewhere in the universe.
And it's for this reason that they've kind of boiled the search for life in outer space down to we'll settle for bacteria. We'll settle for, like a pattern of noise in the static. We'll settle for. So we're no longer really looking for the fully developed alien who comes along and says, "Take me to your leader," right? We're looking for a little bit of bacteria that might be found in some dirt from something that may have been a pond at some point in time in the past, but you don't really know.
Yeah.
So they're trying to make their job easier by looking for bacteria, all the while saying that, well, life here could have formed from bacteria coming from another planet. Well, why isn't the reverse of that true? Why isn't it that maybe bacteria from here floated out in space and ended up on Mars?
Yeah.
Like if they did find some sort of bacteria on Mars, why wouldn't they just assume that, well, that must have, made its way out on one of our rockets and ended up on Mars at some point in time, and now it's, living to some degree there.
Yeah.
And so they've reduced their problem down to, we'll settle for some sort of bacteria, and that's important to them because they think that that's how life started here.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, these are the same people who would look at a fetus in a mother's womb and then question whether there's life there or not.
Yeah, that's the big one that can't.
So they're not being honest. They're not being intellectually honest.
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to accept bacteria on Mars as evidence of life, and then turn around and say that fetus in the womb, well, we really don't know if that's life or not.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're playing favorites here. You're using science to just force an agenda rather than having a standard. Life is X. Therefore, what we see in the womb must be life, right? No, they want to have this slide rule. They want to be able to change definitions along the way.
Yeah. Way to mention a slide rule. I haven't heard that since 10th grade geometry.
Well, I was using my abacus the other day and
Yes.
thought about my slide rule.
Just solving large equations. Yeah, that you bring up a very good point. So that kind of goes back to that previous discussion about science, about essentially what is the worldview that you start with, right? And like you mentioned, now that we understand how finely tuned the universe is, that's now when you start seeing, okay, let's say I'm an unbeliever, right? And I've just discovered, oh, wow, this universe is supremely finely tuned. How am I going to best explain the arrival of all these parameters? I have a couple options. Well, let's say I don't believe in God. And this is what happens a lot, is that they force themselves, they pigeonhole themselves into a materialist mindset.
Right.
They essentially, from the outset, they start off with the assumption it must be a physical explanation. It must be a natural explanation. I cannot let a divine foot in the door. That's a quote from some other scientist or philosopher. They do not want to let that supernatural explanation, even if it answers, it covers, has the great explanatory power and scope, right? They say, nope, I can't even allow that explanation to be possible, so I'm going to continue looking for natural explanations. And this is why now you have theories about multiverses now.
Sure.
Trying to explain the fine-tuning. Well, this universe is finely tuned, yes, but we just got lucky because there just so happens to be an infinite number of universes out there. Yes. It was known. It was known already. So there happens to be an infinite number of universes, and we just happen to be in the one that supports life, and it's no big deal.
Which is such a huge step of faith.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to believe in multiple universes that you've never seen, and that you can't prove. I mean, this is not science. This is faith.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it easier for someone to believe in multiple universes, whereas believing in God is so difficult and so unreasonable to them?
Yeah, and not only that, but it's a theory, right? For which we have absolutely no concrete evidence.
Right.
There's discussions happening.
Except that one documentary that I saw
on Hulu, yeah.
where the Thor captured a tesseract and opened up this portal or something like that. So
yeah, I think you just got a glimpse into the future. That's coming soon. Yeah, I think that's part 3.
Yeah,
isn't it? Yeah,
yeah. I'm inevitable.
I'm open to explanation. I have to be. So this is where we're just hopefully helping an audience understand. Number one, of course, the universe is just so finely tuned, but then helping you understand also there might be some pushback. When you say, well, the universe is finely tuned, well, there's multiverses. My question would be, what's your evidence? Why would you cling so hard to a theory right now that is still in discussion, but it really doesn't explain much? I mean, ask yourself, the type of life that we see here, we have minds, right? We have rational thinking minds that can create, that can rationalize, that can reason. What is the best explanation for how that arrived? It must be, if it's finely tuned, it screams for a designer, a creator.
Yeah, it's a cup and balls game here, because what we're really doing here is just hiding the inevitable problem of explaining. Okay, you've got 2 universes, 3 universes. You were having a hard time explaining how one universe came into existence.
Yeah.
So now you have to explain how 2 universes came into existence, or 3 or 4, or however many you think there are. Now you have to explain all of these universes coming into existence and existing, without our understanding or knowledge of it.
Yeah.
Except just the theory of it. Same thing with the aliens. If we say, well, where did life come from? Well, aliens came and seeded the planet. Okay. Where did those aliens come from? Well, other aliens came and seeded their planets.
Yeah.
Where did those aliens come from? And so you just keep moving the problem back. Eventually,
The unmoved alien.
the unmoved alien.
The uncaused alien.
Yes.
Aquinas wrote about it, I think.
Yeah. Well, that alien is, the minute you explain that there is an infinite alien.
Yes.
Who doesn't need to be created, because he's a necessary alien. It's just like, well, yeah, we call that God.
Yes, you've just described God.
You just ended up at God.
Yeah.
So welcome to the party.
Yes. Welcome to Christianity. Please repent.
Please repent.
Enter into the rest of your Father. Here we go. So, yes, this question about life on other planets. Another way that I've heard it posed. I remember when I was reading God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, and this was also, I think he probably took it from Carl Sagan as well.
Do you read a lot of comedy? But
yes,
or is just that one?
Yes, Dante's Divine Comedy. Yes. Yeah. So the way it was posed was, and check out the speculation here. It was basically, we know that there are at least 1 trillion stars in every galaxy, right? Talking about stars, right? So we have our sun as one of those stars. We know that every galaxy has at least 1 trillion stars. Now, how many galaxies? There's trillions and trillions of galaxies in the universe.
Right.
So you multiply the trillions times the trillion for each galaxy, and this is how many stars. One estimate that I saw of how many possible stars there might be in the universe are in the order of 10 to the 20, right? This is a 1 followed by 20 zeros after that. That's how many stars perhaps there are in the universe.
Massive.
And so the reasoning went like this. We know that, we have life here. We are orbiting one star. And there has to be the possibility of, because there's 10 to the 20 stars in the universe, there has to be at least several others, because there's so many. What are the odds that we are the only star, planet orbiting a star that supports life? What are the odds? Because there's just so many. So just law of probability, they're trying to extrapolate from that and say, there's got to be. There's no actual experimentation. There's no, let's point the Hubble Space Telescope and see, let's let it tell us which of these stars actually support life. They just kind of speculate. And I remember a coworker, we were having a discussion, and he brought that exact quote up. He says, there has to be. There's just so many stars out there in the universe. There just has to be. And it's just pure speculation at that point, right? And my retort, obviously, was to bring up fine-tuning. You have to, when you start taking these parameters into account, it dramatically reduces the odds. For instance, just having 2 parameters, such as I believe it was the distance from that the planet that supports life is from the sun that it orbits, or the star that it orbits, as well as the mass of that star. Just having those 2 parameters alone reduces the qualifying stars in the universe by 99.9%. So just 2 parameters out of 140, and you've already removed 99.9% of stars that might qualify to support life. I mean, again, you're taking a big step of faith, right, in believing that, there might be life out there. So let me get off my soapbox now.
Oh no, it's great stuff, and it's really important to consider what goes into that statement. Like what has to be unpacked for that to actually be possible. What actually has to happen in another area of the creation or the universe or like I've looked at through large telescopes and I've stared out into space and And of course, we've all looked at pictures of the photos that come from the Hubble, and the amazing complexity of what's out there. And before I came to Christ, that was my position, which is, look at the immensity of all of this, and to imagine that life doesn't exist somewhere else. If it and all of this is based on this. All of this stems from this idea that, well, if life found a way here, then life probably found a way somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the concept here, is that, well, if by mere chance out of the Big Bang came us, then what's to say that didn't happen somewhere else? And why isn't it that we would just say, well, more than probably, it must have happened somewhere else if it happened here? Well, if it happened that way here, then I would grant the argument. Mm-hmm. Right. So if we if we can actually believe, if we have enough faith to believe that from the Big Bang we evolved, right? So nothing blew up and then became everything, including humanity.
Yeah.
If that's what I believe, then yes, I also believe that this probably happened elsewhere, in the universe. Okay. But is there a reason for me to think that nothing blew up and became everything and evolved into us and having this conversation? Is there a good reason to think that that's the case, or is it more reasonable to think that there is a creator God who fine-tuned this planet for the life that he created to put on it in a very specific sort of way, and that all the rest of creation is just to display his glory? Mm-hmm. So there's two options. A materialistic explanation where nothing blows up, becomes everything, and evolves into us. And if that's the case, sure, believe that there's probably us out there somewhere else, because the chances are pretty good.
Yeah.
Or there's a creator God who created the universe for his glory, for his purpose, and chose a specific planet in a specific location and put a specific set of perimeters on this planet, the boundaries of our habitation, the fine-tuning that was necessary for this life, and placed mankind and all the other animals and whatnot, the ecosystem, and created it specifically for that purpose, and so that we might look up into the stars and just be amazed at what he's created, and there is no other life like us out there. Right. So with these two options, then what is more reasonable to believe? And I would go back to, well, it's unreasonable to think that nothing blew up and became everything. Mm-hmm. That's not reasonable. So then the materialist would say, well, it's not nothing at the beginning. It's like, a bunch of negative somethings and a bunch of
strings and waves,
positive somethings. And no. Let's start with nothing. Yeah. Not your strings, not your, not your particles, nothing. Zero. Yeah. Because the universe isn't infinite. Mm-hmm. We know the universe is not infinite.
Right.
And so you have to begin with nothing. And nothing has to blow up and become everything. Or you have to have an infinite universe, which would never arrive at today, because you can't traverse an infinite. So we can't go back in time to infinity past and ever arrive at a beginning of time, meaning we would never arrive at today then. So the universe can't be infinite.
So it would have run out of energy a long time ago as well.
Well, sure. There's that problem, but you logically can't arrive at today if the beginning began in eternity past.
Yeah. You'd have to traverse an infinite amount of time.
You can't you'll never get here. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
We would never arrive at today, because you can't get back to the beginning of when it all began, because that began in infinity past.
Unless you're Marty McFly.
Well.
And you go 88 miles per hour.
No. There's something to be said for vehicles made out of
Powered by
stainless
banana
steel.
peels.
But so we know that the universe isn't infinite. It's finite. It has a beginning, and so this steady state concept that it's just been fluctuating forever.
Yeah.
We would never arrive at today. So that's illogical. Nothing will never blow up. So you can't, there's no energy for nothing to blow up. From nothing, nothing will come. So then there must be an infinite creator who has created.
Have to make a decision to create.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so that's more reasonable to believe that there's a creator God who created the universe and then designed us specifically and specially for his purposes on this planet.
Yeah.
Period. And if he were to tell us in his word that he created life elsewhere, I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem with life elsewhere. It's not like I'm going to be like, oh, well, God's cheating on us with that other planet, and those people over there. So, how.
Oprah did say he is a jealous God.
Well, I don't even know what to say to that. Speaking of aliens.
Everybody's getting something.
Speaking of aliens.
So that's actually, I like where you're going with that, because that's actually a good response to another, people try to kind of drop fear within you to kind of accept their position. And they always say, well, how arrogant would it be to think that we're the only ones?
Yeah.
Like Carl Sagan, again, in his Cosmos, the little blue speck, the little blue dot, and basically trying to give you a sense of awe as to how insignificant we are in terms of size within the scope of the universe.
Right.
And essentially getting these emotions drawn up, and then the conclusion is, how sad would it be that we would be the only ones, not even in the center of the universe, right? We're over here somewhere else. How sad would it be that we're the only occupants of the universe? There has to be. So it's a tactic meant to draw up emotions and fear in order to force you into that position of accepting there has to be life. It's not even a scientific explanation. It's more, look, you're arrogant now if you believe, like what your friends were saying, right?
Yep.
You're arrogant if you believe we're the only ones.
And how that doesn't turn into nihilism. Like for me, I once I started going down this path, I came to that place where it was just kind of like, what's the point? And I really was becoming a nihilist, because I was just like, if tomorrow's going to be horrible and the next day is going to be horrible, and I'm just going to be depressed for the rest of my life because I feel like I've been there, done that, and it's all just boring now. Why not just end it? Why not? If non-existence is less pain than existence, then might as well just end it. And I'm guessing if I would have read Sagan's book back then, I would have just probably killed myself. But because what's the point in living? If it is that we're just insignificant people on an insignificant planet, and there's really no point to life, beyond that, and every day is filled with depressing misery, there's no point. And that really kind of set me on a path towards, discovering, the God who has created us and what his plan is, and then discovering that he actually has created life elsewhere.
Yeah. That, I think we've talked about this in other episodes, but the idea that, as a naturalist or just atheist, whatever, what have you, they try to draw up their own meaning for life, right? But if what you're saying is true, right, what's more reasonable to believe? A creator that has created all this, finally tuned it for the express purpose of us glorying in that, us seeking after him when we see the cosmos and we understand, wow, just like Romans 1 talks about, when we look at creation, we know that there is a God. At the very basic, at the most fundamental level, when we look at creation, we know there's a God. Yeah. So there's purpose in that. There's meaning, cosmic meaning, not just our own personal subjective meaning. But when you're a materialist or a nihilist or atheist, you can't have that. So the only avenue that you have is to drum up some sort of personal meaning. So that's the way a lot of people get out of that. They try to escape that nihilism, which is that's the most logical conclusion for if we're just insignificant. they try to escape that by just coming up with, well, when I look out into the universe, it does give me, feelings of awe and just, wow. And that helps me to get on with life because I'm going to make the most of it. Well, there's no purpose. There's no cosmic purpose. Why? You can do that. Sure, that's cool. But you can't turn around and blame the other person who would just off themselves. They're perfectly justified in doing that as well.
Sure. Or the person who grabs a gun and goes and shoots a bunch of people.
Equally justified in that worldview.
Without a God that has created us with purpose, then there is no purpose. We're all just cosmic accidents. We're all just stardust, just kind of floating through this life. And so why should we subscribe to this moral code or that ethical belief? Why not embrace Skinner's ethical relativism and it's just relative,
Yeah.
What you think is good is what you think is good, and what I think is good is what I think is good, and we'll just do whatever we want to do.
Yeah.
And if my good ends up ending your life, you might not like that, but it was what I decided was good.
Yep. Yeah, that's where it leads. So I think that's a good pause point where we can pause. We've been talking about, is there life on other planets? Again, for the people online, you are watching Studio 118 here at Calvary South Austin. Reuben, this is Bunjee. We're broadcasting live on Facebook and also Austin Cable Access Channel 11. If you have questions for our Q&A time after our discussion, feel free to jump on that live chat on Facebook, and we'll queue up your question there. If you'd like to call in your question, feel free to do so. You can call 512-576-5433. Again, it's 512-576-5433. We do want to reiterate, we have services here at Calvary South Austin on Sunday mornings and Wednesday evenings, Sundays at 9:15 and 11:15 a.m., as well as Wednesday evenings at 7. Go ahead and call that number, 512-576-5433. Get some more info. We'd love to have you here. But for now, we're continuing our discussion on aliens. We're still talking about what's the possibility of life on other planets. And I think obviously we're reasoning our way through this. We're using scientific evidence as well as philosophical reasoning to reason our way and say, look, we believe this universe is finely tuned, specially created by a God, one ultimate creator for a certain purpose. And that more than likely, there is no sentient, intelligent life that exists elsewhere in the universe. But we still have cases that we got to talk about. Obviously, we have UFOs, we have sightings. Not only that, but we have witness records of alien contact, right? And I know you have some information about like the different types of aliens that people have seen out there, right? So perhaps, maybe we can talk a little bit about that, just in terms of maybe some of the history or maybe some of the testimonies that you've come across or know of, and just go from there.
Well, when I was abducted the first time, no, I'm no,
It was only one time.
It was just once, yeah. But we won't talk about that.
They abducted you? That tractor beam. I can do it.
She's breaking up, Captain.
Give up.
Get the lithium crystals.
They said, give up. Let's just go mess around with the corn maze. All right, we're out.
Let's go shine bright lights in their eyes. Oh man.
Told you couldn't do it.
Yeah, they first put me in a enclosure that on the housing of it said Sasquatch, and I was like, guys, yes. They shaved me down and realized I was just another human. But
just a skinny little lamb.
That's when they sick the chupacabras on me, just or alien dogs as they like to call them. But no, but. Yeah, I have no doubt that there are people experiencing what they're experiencing, right? So, have I ever seen a UFO? No. I mean, of course, I've seen things flying that I wasn't able to identify, and then Alex Jones helped me to realize that those are unmarked black helicopters.
Yes.
So
Apache
okay, now I got that squared away now.
Okay.
They keep flying over my house too.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
took
understand.
a while. Yeah.
But so, can you dismiss the flaps, the large groups of people who see the same phenomenon? Like the Phoenix lights.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect example. I mean, half of Phoenix saw those lights going over the city. You can't discount that. You can't say it was a hallucination, because hallucinations happen individually.
I was about to say that.
No, yeah. So it's not a hallucination. It's a true phenomenon. Are they drones? Or is it there is a military base there in between Phoenix and Scottsdale. So is it possible that they're testing stuff, and so there's different ways to think about different explanations and whatnot. But people are seeing things, and even looking at some of these videos. I mean, there's debates about are these videos legit or no. But at the end of the day, you definitely have people, even high-level people in the military, coming forward saying that they have witnessed unidentified flying objects, right? So then you can take it further and see that there are people who are claiming to have been abducted,
Mm-hmm.
even possibly impregnated. What are they experiencing? What is it that that they know that they've had an experience? What is it that they experienced? How do you explain it away?
If I could just add real quick, in my research that I was doing, like I said at the outset, there are numerous accounts that are reported. And it is the job of these researchers, right? There's a bunch of different, groups and societies and stuff like that love to pour into these public records and pour through them, right? Now, out of all those accounts that are reported, they do dismiss the majority of them, right? They can be explained by natural phenomena, blah, blah, blah. But there's what's known then as the ones that remain are called the residual UFOs, or the residual accounts. They're the ones that just kind of hang on. They really can't quite find a natural explanation for them, or just the details that are corroborated elsewhere. They just are too. They just bring up a lot more questions than they do answers, right? So I think, no doubt, like you said, there are people that are experiencing these things, and how do you account for them?
Right.
So especially even as a Christian, right? I think it's safe to say that we should be open-minded enough to say people have experiences. Let's not discount that. But now let's start asking the tough questions and see where can we land on this.
So one of the questions that we should ask is, does the Bible mention life beyond our planet? Does the Bible give us any indication that there might be life elsewhere, and that life could interact with this planet and the people of this planet?
Mm.
And the answer is yes. The Bible does give us very clear evidence that God not only created humanity, but before He created Adam and Eve there in the garden, that He had already created several different classes of angelic beings.
Mm-hmm.
So while the Presbyterian ufologist goes to the Bible and
That's not something you hear every day.
so the Presbyterian ufologist goes to the Bible and sees the Bible talking about angels, and then concludes, oh, those angels are really aliens on other planets. Well, I don't think that's proper exegesis. I think a proper interpretation of the scriptures would be to think that the alien encounters that people may be experiencing here are probably some sort of encounter with an angelic being.
Mm-hmm.
So we certainly see many biblical accounts of angelic beings interacting with mankind. You see the angels appearing like men at the tomb of Jesus Christ on the day of His resurrection. And they were glowing, looking kind of like men, right? You see two angels going to Sodom during the days of Lot. And they were tangible physical beings, and the men of the city formed a mob and actually tried to bum rush Lot's house and rape those angels, thinking that they were men.
Yeah.
So there is some sort of interaction that they recognize that these are at least humanoid sort of individuals.
And you got the angels that I believe it was visited, was it Moses or was it Abraham? I forget which one.
Yeah, Abraham.
Abraham, and I believe they actually had a meal.
Yes.
Right, so they were able to interact as well in that way.
But one of the most intriguing accounts is actually found in Genesis chapter 6. And this is during the days of Noah. And Moses tells us in Genesis 6 that it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, all of whom they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. That's when he decided that he was going to reduce the time span of a man's life. Prior to the flood, men lived much longer, but now he's reducing it down. And then Moses goes on to tell us that there were giants on the earth in those days, and afterward also, and when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them, those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. And so there are some who believe that this is actually kind of the foundations for the mythology that then later came along with the Titans and the half god, half men, Hercules kind of individuals. And a lot of these, it's believed that a lot of these mythological stories about the gods coming down and interacting with mankind, they believe that it was birthed out of Genesis chapter 6, where we find the sons of God interacting with the daughters of men, impregnating them in some sort of way, and bearing children who were not entirely human. They're called Nephilim, or what's translated giants here, and they were the mighty men, right? Now, there are some Christians who take this text to mean that the sons of God were actually, the certain bloodline that was a royal bloodline,
sure.
and they weren't supposed to interact with the lesser humans, and so there is one interpretation that would steer us away from there being some sort of supernatural situation happening here. But if you take this in the sense that the ancient Israelites understood it, that there were these angels who came to the earth and engaged in some manner of procreation with the women in those days. And then you even see that the reason why Noah and his family are spared is found here in Genesis 6. It says that the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent and the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing, and bird of the air, for I'm sorry that I've made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of God. This is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God. Now, biblically, we recognize that there is no human that is perfect.
Yeah.
So when it says that Noah was perfect in his generations, and you take that into the context of what we're talking about, is this degradation of human DNA through the manipulation of these angelic beings who are, somehow monkeying around, with humanity through some strange procreation with human women. And yet Noah was perfect in his generations, and therefore his sons were also. And so it seems to suggest here that God destroyed mankind because there was some sort of angelic interaction with the women of the earth, thereby creating this mixed race of being known as the Nephilim. And so God decides that he's going to put an end to all of this and save the human race through this one man who was still genetically human, and so were his sons and then their wives. So that is one interpretation of this text. And if that's the proper interpretation, then what this would suggest is that they probably experienced some sort of alien encounter, so to speak.
Sure.
And another interesting aspect of this is that some of the people who claim to have been abducted talk about, women being impregnated and these sorts of experiments, right? So, does this mean that these angels actually engaged in physical procreation with these women? I wouldn't think so, but would an angel understand how to, do what doctors do today and artificially inseminate a woman? And would they know how to manipulate, the DNA and alter it in some sort of way, like scientists are doing today, as they start making humanized mice and, half gorilla, half human, weird things going on. And could angels not do those things that modern scientists do today? So then you have Jude coming along later and talking about the angels who left their proper abode in the context of Noah. He's talking about the days of Noah, and then talks about these angels who left their proper abode, and God has put them in chains of darkness until the judgment day. Yeah. So why are these angels, these fallen angels, why are they locked up in this very specific sort of way, while other fallen angels are still free to roam the earth right now? What is it that those angels did that was so far beyond what God could allow that he's now has to lock them up until the final judgment?
Yeah, interesting.
So you have this aspect of some sort of interaction between life from elsewhere. I'm not saying another planet, but this gets back into interdimensional beings, who could exist with us even right now, and we don't even know it.
So yeah, real quick, when we talk about interdimensional, right, we've already kind of thrown out the idea that life on other planets within the physical realm of space and time that we exist in, right? Now you throw out interdimensional. This is also clear in the Bible as well, right? That there is this other realm, a spiritual realm, if you will, right? That where other beings exist, like we're talking about these angelic beings. We did throw out, obviously there's accounts where angels have obviously manifested physically within our realm, and we can interact with them, and they interact with us, and even on a physical level. But there's also accounts from a spiritual realm. There's this other realm in existence that we can't see. And I believe, I always keep forgetting, which is the prophet that was given permission to see that other realm for a moment, and he saw this great battle between all these angels. But there's that account.
So are you talking about Daniel?
No, I forget which prophet it was. Anyway, it was given permission just for a little bit, and he saw.
Yeah. You're talking about Elisha.
Yeah. And so, but he was previously he couldn't see, but it was still there. It was happening just in a different dimension, if you will.
Elijah, not Elisha.
But it was just in a different dimension, if you will. So that's what you talk about interdimensional.
Yeah, they came to capture him. And Elisha was freaking out, and Elijah said, "No, God opened his eyes," and Elisha then was able to see the chariots of fire and God's military surrounding the army that came to capture. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you got inspired. Yeah. So there is this reality.
Yeah.
And that's something I think that perhaps many Christians would need to come to grips with. First of all, is that there is this supernatural, spiritual realm that exists, that is even among us right now, that there's activity going on. Probably it's not probably everywhere pervasive. I don't have any evidence to say otherwise either, but point is, it's there.
How many angels are there? How many fallen angels are there? We know that a third of the angels fell with Lucifer. How many angels were there to start off with? We don't know. Like, how many different kinds of angels are there? There does seem to be some lists in the Bibles that would suggest that there's several different levels of
hierarchy,
angelic hierarchy. But there's not enough for us to go on to make all those definitive statements about it. But what is interesting, and just pure speculation, is that when Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, there was an angel who was set there with a burning sword and set there to guard re-entry, so that humans don't re-enter, eat from the tree of everlasting life, and then live in the state of fallen, cursed flesh, which is really the basis for every zombie / Dracula movie is that here's a person in their fallen flesh that cannot die unless you shoot him in the head, but
or stab him with a silver spike.
But so I mean that is what God is trying to avoid, is that we might all become these Draculas or these zombies who live forever in a fallen state.
And have to count for kids shows. No.
No.
And we get that.
Yeah.
We out there?
Oh yeah.
All right.
As usual.
All right.
So then the question is then that angel with the flaming sword, where is this angel at?
Mm-hmm.
And how is it that he's guarding the Garden of Eden?
Yeah.
And so then the question is, okay, how did God walk with Adam and Eve in the garden during the cool of the day?
Yeah.
And how many dimensions did Adam and Eve actually occupy before the curse? I don't know. I mean, it's, like I said, pure speculation.
Sure.
But is it possible that Adam and Eve in their original creation, in their original bodies there in the garden, actually experienced more than the 4 dimensions that we exist in right now?
Mm-hmm.
Very possible. And if so, then it's possible that they also had fellowship with angelic beings. And we certainly see that happening in a strange way in the Garden of Eden. So if we back up and look at Genesis chapter 3, we see Eve going to the tree with the fruit on it that was forbidden, the knowledge of good and evil. And she's there, and what does she find there at the tree but some sort of serpent? And you know, Satan, of course, is called a dragon in some texts, right? We see him being called a dragon. We see him being called a serpent.
Great serpent.
You know, these are, you know, so reptilian.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we see Satan being referred to in sort of a reptilian sort of sense. And so when we consider the different kinds of aliens that people experience, you know, of course, you have the common greens, you got the grays, and then you've got the reptilians,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
And had to, but saw it on YouTube. It's got to be true.
We're off Facebook now, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah.
we get booted off every other week. So, so yeah, you know, you have Satan being, you know, presented in sort of a reptilian way there in the garden. And so the serpent's there, and we see Moses writing that he's more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said, to the woman, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat, or nor shall you touch it, lest you die. And then the serpent said to the woman, you shall not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So there's the lie that led Eve, you know, to make that decision to eat the fruit, and then she gave the fruit to Adam, and he ate, and you know, and then the curse came, and they were kicked out of the garden, and then you have this angel guarding the Garden of Eden so that they can't re-enter. Well, so it's interesting here that we have this reptilian sort of being who is not an earthbound being. This is an angelic being who fell from grace, you know, sinned against God with the I am, you know, I will be like the Most High God and all these sorts of things, and God cast him to the earth. But is this an alien? Not to say that angels are aliens, but are aliens really angels?
Right.
And are the reptilians that people see actually, you know, I guess, are they fallen angels of the sort of class of angel that Satan is? Can't say for certain, but it's certainly interesting to speculate about.
Yeah.
But we can take it even further to Revelation 16, and we see as the bowl judgments are being poured out. Mm-hmm. So the bowl judgments are being poured out during the time of tribulation. And in Revelation 16:12, it says, the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. So that's when, you know, China begins to invade. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs. So again, reptilian, they're like frogs, but they're spirits. And so these 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon. So again, we find another class of reptilian here, out of the mouth of the beast and out of the mouth of the false prophet, for they are spirits of demons. So these frog-like spirits are spirits of demons. So you have demons, and then you have these spirits of demons. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. But remember, demons are fallen angels. And it would appear that fallen angels, or angels, I should say in general, at least one class of angel has something that appears to be what we would say a classic UFO. Sort of look and feel to it, right?
Okay.
We see that in Ezekiel chapter 1. So here in Ezekiel, Ezekiel's being carried away captive, and he's sitting at the river Kebar, and he's praying, and he's crying, and he's looking to the Lord, and as he looks up, he sees these angelic beings coming. And he describes them. He says, behold, a whirlwind. This is Ezekiel chapter 1. There's a whirlwind coming out of the north, a great cloud with a raging fire engulfing itself, and brightness was all around it, and radiating out of its mist like the color of amber out of the midst of a fire. And within it came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of man, so they're humanoid in their appearance, right? But each one had 4 faces, and each one had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, their soles of the feet, like the soles of calves, and so on and so forth. He begins explaining or describing these angelic beings, right? And these wings are stretching out and all these sorts of things, and he describes these 4 angels. But then as he continues to describe them, he says, now I looked at the living creatures. Behold, a wheel was on the earth beside each living creature with its 4 faces. So you have the being, but then you have beside the being these wheels. And he says the appearance of the wheels and their workings was like the color of beryl, and all 4 had the same likeness. The appearance of their workings was, as it were, a wheel in the middle of a wheel. When they moved, they went toward any one of 4 directions. In other words, they weren't making arcing turns, but they were making right angle turns, much like you see in some of these UFO videos.
Yeah.
You see these UFO craft, making 90-degree angled turns that don't seem to make sense with the laws of physics as we know them. And then when you see this craft going into the water and out, there's no splash, that leads you to understand that that's not material, that's not matter. There's something immaterial about that. But it says that their rims were so high, they were awesome, and their rims were full of eyes. Now, before lights are created, how would you describe little lights on, a circular craft like this? Maybe as eyes. So they're full of eyes all around. As for their rims, they were so high, they were awesome. Their rims were full of eyes all around them. When the living creatures went, the wheels went beside them, and when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. So these circular, objects with lights all around them, that had another wheel on the inside, would go up and take off this way and that way. Wherever the living creature would go, the wheels within wheels would also go. And the reason why is because, according to Ezekiel, it's because the spirit of that living creature was actually in this wheel within a wheel, right? Wherever the spirit would go, they went, because their spirit went, the spirit went, and when the wheels were lifted up together with them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. When those who went, when those went, these went. When those stood. And when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up together with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. The likeness of the firmament above the heads of the living creatures was like the color of an awesome crystal, stretched out over their heads. And under the firmament, their wings spread out straight, one toward another. Each one had 2, which covered one side. Each had 2, which covered the other side of the body. They went, and I heard the noise of their wings, like the noise of many waters, like the voice of the Almighty, a tumult, like the noise of an army. So these things were making some noise that was ominous.
Sounds like a black helicopter.
Could be a black helicopter.
Yeah. He was right.
Just very. This text has intrigued me for many years. Because when I first came to Christ, having come out of a background that was very interested in UFOs and all these sorts of things, in my discussions with other believers, I was instantly brought to this text and said, well, how do you explain this? Right? Is this what you think those things are? And it was just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. But what we do find are these, circular craft, wheel-like crafts, vehicles of a spirit. So we know it's a vehicle because there's a spirit inside of it.
Yeah.
and somehow it's traveling with this angelic being, but in what way, and can that angel remain unseen while the craft remains seen? And that's, a good question to ponder, but I would imagine that could be possible. Mm-hmm. But so then the question is, when Ezekiel looked up and he saw this happening, what kind of language would he use to even describe this, except, what he...
Language of his day.
Right,
Yep.
what, the language of his day, versus how would we look at this and describe it now? If somebody said, hey, I saw something circular and it had lights all around it, what would you say they saw? And we'd probably use that UFO terminology, whereas he just says it's a wheel within a wheel, and it's, filled with the spirit of this angel that was next to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. So we're bringing up the kind of biblical background to show, obviously, there is this these interdimensional beings, these spiritual forces, if you will. Fallen angels are part of that equation, and they're obviously against the purposes of God, and they've been given some sort of control even over this earth, this planet. And then we're trying to tie it into these sightings and these encounters even, right? Where people have not only just seen UFOs up in the sky, but now we're having more and more reports of close encounters, people being impregnated, people being assaulted. They have no recollection, only if they go under hypnotherapy or something like that, and they recall these.
Which is always questionable, right? About that one.
Right.
Oh, that's a memory that someone helped you to get while you were hypnotized. No, okay.
They incepted a memory. Okay, makes sense.
A memory within a memory.
Yes. So you do have these reports, and so how can we tie these two together, right? We have these, obviously, as believers, we know this is a reality that exists, but then we have these residual accounts that just are tough to explain. Can we tie the two together? Can we make sense of it?
Well, we certainly don't see aliens bringing us, cures for cancer and COVID, right? Like, we don't see them being these, benevolent beings who are here to help, and they're, going to help us to figure out how to solve global warming and these sorts of things, right? Mm-hmm. No, they're here to deceive. They're here to capture. They're here to, the ones that, are legitimate and not just, I think I saw a UFO that my truck wouldn't start on the road, and, so setting aside all of the, made up stuff or somebody was high, mm-hmm. And you get down to the legit experiences that can't be easily dismissed. Mm-hmm. Is it possible then that what these people really experienced was a demonic entity or possibly an angelic being? Because when Ezekiel's describing this, he's actually describing angels, but then we also recognize that there's fallen angels who are of the same design. So, I'm not so quick to just say that all of these experiences are automatically demonic, and I mean, it could be,
demons.
Right. I don't want to be that guy, but, is it possible that God would send an angel, much like God sent this angel to Ezekiel there, the four angels that he sent with the round craft that came along with them, right?
Yeah.
That's still possible, I would assume. But then we also see, like, the sons of God procreating with the daughters of men back in the days of Noah. And then Jesus says, just like the days of Noah were, so shall too the days of the coming of the Son of Man will be, right? Mm-hmm. So if we go back and we say, well, what was happening in the days of Noah, and that's going to happen again, during the days that lead up to the second coming of Christ. Well, if you have sons of God interacting with the daughters of men in an attempt to create this hybrid, breed of people, if that's what Jesus is talking about, then we should expect to see something that we would consider to be alien life, coming in and interacting with humans here on this planet. Yeah. And I think that, the devil and his demons are leading the government to prepare us for that with the release of these questionable videos. Mm-hmm. I don't look at these videos and automatically think, oh yeah, that's legit. Yeah. But I'm wondering, is the enemy setting us up for the sons of God to come back mm-hmm. and start monkeying around with human DNA?
Yeah. So I might take a different route here, where in the stuff that I was researching, it was explaining how a lot of these reports, when you take into account, okay, like time of day, that these reports, they usually happen like in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m. or something like that, a lot of those. And then also, who are the types of people that are bringing these reports? You can't really find a pattern there. There's blue-collar folk, white-collar, male, female, doesn't matter. There's not really a discernible pattern there. One thing that did pop out was that for these, especially these close encounters, there was definitely an increased level of people or people related to those people who had encounters of looking into like New Age or occultism, that kind of stuff. And which is very interesting, right? Because that's, again, coming as from a biblical worldview. We see clear instructions, clear commandments to stay away from those those activities.
Right.
For as we know, that these are opening people up for demonic possession or demonic oppression, what have you, right? And so I think it's very reasonable to then, it's a very small logical jump to say that, yeah, these close encounters, especially when you, as you rightly brought up, none of them are going to be positive in nature. They're always meant to deceive or instill fear or obviously lie to these people and say, well, I come from some other planet or I come from some other dimension and we're just here to mess with you. A good number of these close encounters, especially the really close ones, people being abducted and stuff like that, they're left with long-term mental issues. They're left with even physical harm, right? Evidences of scrapes and bruises and stuff after the fact, right?
Yes.
So it's never meant to be positive in nature. Let me cuddle you like a little baby, like that picture that was shown earlier. And when we come from a biblical standpoint, we see, oh, these people are messing with these occult activities, and they're opening themselves up for this type of activity to happen to them. And given what we know about alien activity and tying it into perhaps these fallen angels, I think it's very reasonable to say, yeah, these close encounters of a third kind, if you will, are more than likely demons, interdimensional, basically. Right. That's that hypothesis. Yep. It doesn't have to come from another planet. It can come from elsewhere.
We've never had any radar tracking a craft from, light years away to the Earth. They always just appear here. I
remember going back to Carl Sagan, right? I think he's the one that described in a way of, we exist in a 4-dimensional reality, right? So when we start talking about, well, what is it like how would we tell if another dimension were to interact with our dimensions?
It's the flat land concept.
Exactly. Yeah. How would it look? So if you have 3 dimensions and you have a 2-dimensional object crossing the plane of a 3-dimension, it would just look like a 2-dimensional figure.
So,
right?
So the concept there is that if you are a 2-dimensional being, mm-hmm. and a sphere passed through your plane, you're a 2-dimensional being living in a 2-dimensional world, and a 3-dimensional sphere passes through mm-hmm. your plane, your 2-dimensional plane. What would that look like? Well, you wouldn't see a big circle. What you would see is a small hole open up, become large, and then become small again, right? Because that's all you can see in a 2-dimensional realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of now, we're talking about interdimensional beings being these fallen angels or even the non-fallen angels. When they interact with our plane of reality, I think it would be reasonable to assume that, that's what we would expect. These objects in the sky that are traveling at speeds that are not known for us. Right. We're not capable of that right now, technologically speaking. They don't seem to obey the laws of physics. Well, they're coming from a different dimension that they don't have to, right? They are not leaving the trails of evidence that we would expect, for instance, like like radar, being recognized on a radar, or the splashes in the water, making those right turns and not exhibiting like this great force, these G-forces or whatever. But they do leave some evidences, right? Like scorches on land, mm-hmm. the soil molecular, the molecular makeup of the soil that they're messing with is messed with to a certain extent. They can manipulate, obviously, our physical being, so they're leaving scrapes and bruises and stuff like that. So,
and let's not forget about the crop circles that actually produce the best kettle corn.
Yes,
so
love it. I've conquered every single one of them.
Crop circle kettle corn.
So all this to say, I think, kind of going back, let's circle back to the beginning, as Jen Psaki would say.
I'm going to circle back to this gas station and hope that there's more gas tomorrow.
So I think we've taken a good look, right, at the evidence that's been presented to us. We have these accounts. Obviously, there's a great number, and a lot of them, you can just dismiss, but there are this small amount that, we have to take a closer look at. Mm-hmm. There's people who have stories that they recall. They can give great detail, and some of these details are corroborated, right? We have, obviously, these UFO sightings. Now, what is our worldview that we're starting with? We're starting from a biblical worldview that
certainly.
Right out the gate, it just assumes a spiritual dimension. There is a God. There's a creator who has finally created this universe. We're in it. There's a spiritual realm. It is just assumed in the Bible. And we see these interactions between these spirit beings with the physical beings here on earth. It's all there. It's coherent, it's logical, and now we have these accounts that we're trying to explain, and I think we've come to a reasonable conclusion, basically, to show that, most likely, I think a lot of these UFO sightings, although it's, the ones we saw here today, we don't know the explanation for sure, but it can be deduced, right? That those might be interdimensional beings.
I think one was a tic tac on a string.
Yes.
But that's my take.
One of them looked like a dreidel. So
one of them looked like a TIE fighter.
And it still made sound in space. Interesting. All right. Very cool. So hopefully that's a lot of good info. And right now, we're going to enter into our Q&A portion. We have, looks like we've been flooded with a lot of questions. People are definitely interested in this topic. So before we get into the Q&A portion, I do want to address the people out there on internet land. Thank you for tuning in again. We're Studio 118. We've been talking about aliens. We're about to enter in our Q&A portion. So if you got questions, we're streaming. I've been corrected. We're streaming on YouTube. That is still a go. So if you have questions, we're going to try to get through as many as we can right here, but feel free to queue yours up. Go on the live chat there on YouTube and put your question down. Or if you're on Cable Access Channel 11, or if you just want to talk to another person on the phone, go ahead and call 512-576-5433 and get your questions in about everything aliens, and we'll try to do our best. Here we go. First question, Bunjee. I think this is the first question. Yep. Do you think there are any half-breeds, demon, human half-breeds living today?
Not since Andre the Giant died, but...
Anybody want a peanut?
You are the Brew Squad.
Nice. So that's a no. The last one died out.
It's an interesting question because, we do see, a connection with the Nephilim to the sons of Anak, and there's a bloodline that seems to continue, but I would be hard-pressed to say yes to that, because there does seem to be some sort of reprieve, between the time period of ancient Israel and the time period that Jesus says is going to be reminiscent of the days of Noah. So even like with the sons of Anak, and that whole bloodline, and then the giants, like David fought Goliath, right? And we do still see giants roaming the earth. Goliath had brothers, and this was all part of this same bloodline. Where did those guys come from? If there wasn't similar activity as before, it's hard to say. It's hard to say, but yeah, I would probably say no. Now, if somebody gave me a special pair of glasses and I was able to actually see, that they live, then I would change my answer. But at this point, I would say no. I'm not aware of anyone that is of that bloodline at this point in time. Though I do think that we are starting to see some sort of manipulation of human DNA in labs, and that's going to play into the prophecy that Jesus presented about the days before his return being like the days of Noah. And then that leads itself to questions about the Antichrist, and is he going to be fully human? And anyway.
Yeah, so I'm always very skeptical of like when it comes to especially like the mixing of DNA and stuff like that. Just because my understanding, right, of the way our DNA is set up versus other creatures and stuff like that, and the possibility of being able to mix what do they call, like chimeras and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they never work out, right? They will they will proceed for a certain amount of time, but they always just die out.
That's why we need the aliens.
We do need the aliens. We need that alien intelligence, Prometheus. So, I'm just always skeptical, but of course, I'm always open to see it happen.
Right.
So the day I see it, I'll be like Thomas. I need to see it and touch it.
I don't really want to touch it.
I want it to attack me, and then I'll believe it. So that's actually a good question. How is it even possible for human DNA to be compatible with demon/fallen angel DNA?
And that wasn't the point that I was making.
Sure.
So when I read Genesis, chapter 6, and I consider the strange events that are described there, my take on it is that the fallen angels were using, male sperm and manipulating the DNA of it, not adding angelic DNA to it, but engaging in some higher level of understanding of how things work that is beyond mankind, and creating some sort of abomination.
Yeah.
Can I prove that? Of course not. I mean, it's pure speculation. But when I look at the text, what we have are the sons of God engaging in some strange method of procreation with the daughters of men and creating Nephilim.
Mm-hmm.
So everything past that is speculation. How would they go about that?
So would you say they engaged in gain-of-function research?
I would not say that, but you can.
Yeah. I get it. All right. How about this? Let's see. Did these supposed half-breeds, right, have the same chance for salvation as full humans?
No. I mean, the story is clear that that's why God destroyed the earth
at that point.
Yeah.
Very cool. Simple, to the point. All right.
Yeah. So the blood of Jesus Christ pays for the blood of for the sins of humans.
He took on human flesh, right, for that purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
He didn't take on Nephilim flesh. He took on human flesh.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bible. How about this one? Do you think Jesus and angels will return in UFOs?
No. I mean, I don't think Jesus needs a unidentified flying object.
It will be very identifiable.
Well, like he's coming back on a horse.
Yeah.
Can we speculate that might be some sort of craft and not like an actual literal horse? I tend to take the Bible literally until there's reason to think that it's parabolic or metaphorical. So when I see Jesus coming back on a white horse, I take that literal, and the reason why is because, the first prophecy was about him coming on a donkey, and he literally jumped on a baby donkey and rode into Jerusalem. So when it says he's coming back on a white horse, I'm going to just go ahead and assume that he's coming back on a white horse, not in a spaceship, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to that specific class of angelic being that Ezekiel saw, I'm going to assume that those are the angelic beings, and I think that what people are seeing, the ones that have legitimate experiences, close encounter experience, when they see a circular craft or some sort of strange, UFO, if it's not military and not earthborn, then chances are what they're seeing is what Ezekiel saw, which is a wheel within a wheel with eyes all about, or what we would call a UFO, and what's inside of it is the spirit of that angelic being. Yeah. So then, as the angels return, well, the ones who were designed to have this wheel within a wheel beside them, that's going to be with them. If those are the angels that are coming back with Jesus at that point in time.
Yeah. Would a plausible interpretation be, what if it could be a vehicle that has a 1 horsepower engine? Think? Would he make it?
You sat on that for a minute, didn't you? So
How am I going to say this?
This is going to be so good. Yeah.
Before we get to the next question.
So would that be a Pinto?
Yeah.
Jesus is coming back in a white Pinto.
It breaks down on him mid-air.
Nay.
Oh, nice.
Bad jokes.
Chevy Nova. Before we get to another question, I do, for the studio audience here, if you guys have questions, I think you can contact Jeremy, write down your question on paper.
Except the guy wearing the tinfoil on his head. He can say nothing. Nothing.
I'll tell you what, he's the most sane of us here. He's protected. All right, here's another question. Is there evidence that would allow us to reasonably speculate UFO sightings and abductions are tied to demonic activity? I think that's basically what we concluded, right? But the evidence is taking the biblical worldview again, and then looking at these residual accounts and just understanding the circumstances surrounding them and the testimonies and stuff like that. I think you could conclude that.
Yeah, so I think we've built a case that the God of the Bible must exist, because there is no explanation for the universe aside from that. So we have the God of the Bible that has to inform us about life elsewhere. Mm-hmm. He hasn't given us any evidence that there is life on other planets of the same nature as us, but he has given us the evidence that there are angels, and some of those angels are fallen, and that they've interacted with humans in a way that some of these angels had to be chained up for their sins, and that the days before the coming of the Son of God and during his second advent, before that happens, that the time period is going to be reminiscent of what happened during the days of Noah when those angels left their proper abode, right? So as we add all of this up, then what I'm led to believe then is any legitimate experience of alien life is actually someone interacting with a fallen angel or an angel of God.
Yeah, and also, my understanding from the research I did was also some of these residual accounts where they had encounters where the message is being spread. Some of them had to deal with the alien is trying to deceive the person to believe that, religion is useless, or even trying to dismiss the deity of Jesus, that kind of stuff. And it's like, why? Come on, alien. Like, why are you going to go there, right? Yep. So that brings up the question. Yeah, of course. How can you not conclude demonic activity at that point, right? I did. There's a movie that had watched some time. I love kind of watching these types of movies, but one of them is The Fourth Kind, which deals with an encounter of the fourth kind.
Was it good? I've thought about watching it, but
I like it.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorites. Anyways, I remember watching it. This was years ago, and I watched it with a couple of friends from back home. And at the end of it, I don't want to spoil it, but basically, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is an interesting take on it." But I definitely thought demonic activity, right?
Sure.
And that got me thinking about, how do we integrate these two things, right? So, very good movie. Anyways, so we built up that case. Here's another question for you. Have either of you seen or experienced anything like a UFO? I've not.
Yeah, I remember, growing up in Phoenix, I remember going out in my backyard, and I remember the first time that I looked up, and the desert sky is huge. Growing up in El Paso, you probably recognize that when you look up in a desert sky, it's just kind of like massive sky. It's not like here, where you're kind of, we got trees and things
light
blocking,
pollution.
Light pollution. But so I remember, walking out in my backyard as a little kid, in Phoenix, and looking up at the sky for the first time, right? Mm-hmm. For the first time, really just kind of taking in this massive Phoenix sky, and then the Phoenix lights were there, and no, but I remember like looking up and just realizing that something is looking back at me, and I just knew it. And I got so freaked out. I turned around, ran back in the house, and it was a while before I went back outside.
Mommy.
Come to realize that that was probably the Spirit of God just making himself known to me in an interesting way.
Did his eyes blink like this?
Yeah, exactly. But no, I haven't personally experienced. Now I've experienced paranormal activity. in many different ways. As a child, I've experienced paranormal activity. As a young adult, playing with Ouija boards and doing lots of drugs. We had some really scary times. And then as a Christian, also, I remember doing an outreach at the Whole Life Expo and experiencing demonic activity that was even visible to me at a point in time. So I have experienced paranormal activity, but it's and I do believe that UFOs are paranormal. They're supernatural. They're angelic beings, whether fallen or still pure. So
They're not light projections.
Yeah, they are not light projections made by the military, but yeah. So like I wouldn't say that I've seen a spacecraft. So like Ezekiel saw,
Right.
But I've most certainly experienced demonic entities.
Yeah, you haven't seen Bertrand Russell's teacup orbiting Jupiter or something like that?
No,
okay.
Not yet.
All right. Just making sure.
I'll keep my eyes out though.
Yes. That you bring up a good point where you were talking about, when you've attended conferences and you're just like on drugs and some of those drugs. I remember hearing, this might be a good episode to do, but this guy describing his venture into New Age occultism and taking all sorts of drugs and basically doing like astral projection and just going into that other realm. Right. And the things that he experienced, lucid dreaming, crazy stuff that
there are spirit guides who will also guide you through all of these sorts of things. So what are those?
Right.
What are these spirit guides that people experience when they're doped out of their minds? It's like
at first they are friendly in a way, but then they start becoming more and more demanding and oppressive and stuff like that. It's crazy stuff.
They are not your friends.
Right. Very interesting. All right, I have a question myself. So as Christians, right, we don't have to fear, whether there's life elsewhere, and how do we handle all this kind of stuff. I think that's all done. But then, obviously, how do we interact then with the culture that is obviously intrigued, right? And Christians even, right, that. We have podcasts that are, like Joe Rogan podcast that always brings guests on to talk about this kind of stuff, or other podcasts that talk about this kind of stuff. Yeah. Interdimensional realities and stuff. What encouragement or what kind of like cautions can we give Christians that are really intrigued by this, but maybe there's that we can take it a little too far or something. I hope you understand where I'm going with this, but just a general encouragement or a general kind of word of caution.
Right. Well, I certainly don't have a problem, with Christians digging into the X-Files, so to speak, right? Because the Bible's filled with them, But I do think that we need to ground ourselves in the Word of God first, and not get carried away, with a study that would take us off of the primary, objective that the Lord has for us, right? So, for example, the primary purpose of the Christian is to glorify God first, and secondly, to interact with our Christian community, and thirdly, to then reach out to the world. And so, this kind of encompasses the general concept of Christianity. We are to worship God and love Him and know Him and experience Him. We are to experience that in Christian community, and then as a Christian community, we are to reach out to the world and invite people in to our community so that they can be, in relationship with our God, right? So, there is, Christianity in a nutshell, right? As we interact with the world, there are going to be those times when people are going to, throw that objection about the Christian faith, and they're going to say, well, I'm not going to believe what you believe because X, Y, and Z. Well, you ought to have a defense for X, Y, and Z, and Z is clearly zombies, but X is. Well, yeah, but there are going to be those people who, have a debate about the God of the Bible because of aliens. And I think Christians ought to be equipped to be able to have that conversation and help them to think this thing through as we've done tonight. But when it becomes something that is just like, this is what I focus on: aliens and demons, and all the things surrounding this.
Yeah.
I think that it gets a little unhealthy.
Yeah.
So let's keep the first things first,
Yeah.
and then treat these things and put them in their proper places.
Yeah. Very well said.
Yep.
Great. Well, I think that will conclude our episode for Studio 118, talking about aliens. We are tinfoil hat approved over here. Thank you guys for joining us online. We really appreciate you joining us. And until the next one, I'm Reuben. This is Bunjee, and we hope to catch you next month.